Please understand when you're going through when you're going through something hard, and I don't just mean circumstantially like your typical big problems in life. I don't just mean those. I do mean those though. But I mean, like, suppose emotionally or mentally or financially or spiritually. We'll emphasize emotionally and mentally, however, right now for the point of discussion here. I think that a lot of times people are like, well, where is God? And, I know he loves me and I know he's with me and all that. If you even have that sense still with you, I mean, sometimes people fight losing that sense temporarily, and that's why we don't go by feelings. We go by facts that we know are true and the promises of God. But the fact of the matter is that people are sometimes go through mental and emotional duress, and you always are kind of like, well, what's the point of this? Why am I fighting this? This is very uncomfortable. Why is God even allowing it? See, we're just full of questions. But what I want to encourage people on is this. Rather than thinking any number of wacky thoughts that people could gravitate to, when you're fighting something, particularly those things that are in your personal sphere of discomfort, and they seem senseless and they seem like, let's say, bad health, but it doesn't have to just be physical. It can be, duressful things. Suppose you don't feel like your mind is working as it ought and it's kind of working against you in a sense, and you got to keep it reined in, or you got to keep it going in the right direction, or you got to push off thoughts that aren't right, emotions that aren't right. And it seems like it's just kind of an unnecessary weighty thing. Here you are, you love God and you just want to serve him, so why all the fuss? Why all the fuss? Or fuss is not really the word, but why all the hindrances to push through? I'm just speaking from my heart, mind, and what I've been tempted about, and that is to wonder why. Why are simple things, why don't your emotions and your mind just help you out and not fight against you? Well, always remember this. This is my whole point right here. You ready? Okay. My whole point is that there is a freaking tug of war over you. There's a tug of war over you. You have to understand, instead of thinking why, what's the sense, God's in charge, but if I had his job, I wouldn't let me have these particular problems. No matter what the problem may be, okay? But I'm centering more right now on the mental and emotional, sometimes things we have to push through that seem oppressive, okay? And a lot of times if you have a circumstantial problem, well, then it's evident to the whole world. But if you fight something personally, it's not as evident to the whole world. And I think when we have what we call normal problems or regular problems, even if they're severe, we kind of think, well, that's life, But sometimes in our private world, we're like, okay, well, is it really, quote, life or normal for me in a boot camp life to have so much mental to push through or emotional to come against me that I have to push through? The answer is yes. All the problems are kind of in the same basket. A boot camp life can consist of many things, and for most people, it consists of a little of every category, to be honest with you. No matter how much people admit it or wear it on their sleeve or want to talk about it, everybody pushes through not only the physical, obvious, well, I just have to get a new job now because unexpectedly my company folded or thought I didn't have enough seniority and they wanted to lay off a few people. See, everybody understands those kind of problems, but sometimes the mental and emotional oppressions and duresses that try to float in, I think people understand, but they don't like to say they understand it. They don't like to necessarily chit-chat about it because they imagine that other people don't go through that, and so they don't know for sure, frankly, in a lot of cases. So, there's a bit of stigma with it, or people feel like, hey, I don't know who understands this and who doesn't, so I'm not going to say anything about it. But just understand this. Okay? There is a tug of war over you. And you have to understand that because there's a tug of war over you, that means that you're so important. Why would any entities beyond this world, this mortal world, why would there be forces, tug of warring, in other words, civil warring or warring or battling over you? Why would anybody, any spirit in the supernatural world where you came from, by the way, you're a spirit, you're not an animal. You have a body, which has got its animalistic parts to it that can relate to that realm. But you're a spirit if you're a human being made in God's image. He loves you, and he has enemies, and they don't like you or him. And I'm not going to go all into that right now. Listen to my other tapes. But you have to understand when you have to push through, you have to really, really be determined to survive. You have to be a survivor. You have to cling to God for one thing, because you don't have the ability to beat your enemies because they're his enemies and they're all smarter than you. You have to hang on to God for all you're worth. And even when you do that, okay, there's what's called valleys and difficulties, and they don't feel good. They don't feel good, okay? But the reason people crash and burn is because they lose the understanding that they're so freaking important eternally. And that's why there's a war over them. No matter how nasty, ugly, vicious you feel the war is in your head or in your emotions, but it could be the physical realm as well. Whatever you're going through, please understand that the more severe it is, the more you should feel complimented and important and vital, and like you're a threat because you are. Like you're a freaking threat because you are. You are a threat eternally to somebody called the devil and his minions. You are a threat. You're eternal. It's not like you're a threat for 65, 85 years. You're a threat to him, to your enemy and God's enemy forever. You are sealing his fate and his doom, and he wants to punch God really hard on the way out the door. He thinks he's still going to win, because he's that deluded. But the point is, he's not going to win, but he wants to take as much from God and get that. The people made in God's image, he wants them to worship him. Either by default, because they put themselves on the throne of their life and they spit in God's face by doing so. And he wants to talk them into doing that one at a time. Now, how do you talk people into being that stupid? How do you do it? Okay? You cause them to have lots of problems that don't feel good. And, and some people you got to press out of hell harder than others. The devil has a plan, you see. So he will attack people. He will bother people. He will, harass people. And then, of course, human beings have a choice. They have a choice. But you got to have a little knowledge of what you're involved in to understand your choices. Okay? But God says if you look at creation and no one tells you anything, you can figure out the basic choice that there's a creator of all things. There's a creator of all things, and you ought to be worshiping him and trusting him eternally. You don't even have to understand the fact that God has an enemy, and that's your enemy, and his name is the devil. It's great if you understand that. That's why God left you his word. But if you don't understand that, If you were to never understand that, you still have a choice, and you have instinct enough within you because God put it in there so that you know that you have a basic choice. You may not know as many details as the next person, but you have a choice. And here's the thing, and you'll know it. You'll know it. You'll know it deep inside. You have a conscience. You'll know it. But understand, if you know everything, you've read your Bible, if you understand what you're involved in more detail, then understand this. If your mind and your emotions seem to give you a hard time, okay, pray about it, that you'll get delivered from that. I understand that. But you listen, if we had the answer to prayer for everything we ask for within 5 minutes every time we ask for it, we'd be in heaven already. All right? It's going to be a boot camp life. You're not going to get relief and deliverance every 2 seconds from everything that ever comes your way. So get ready for the war that's over you. It's meant to pull you off your horse. It's meant to shoot you full of holes. It's meant for you. But in the end, it's your decision. Your decision. Your decision. And your decision's going to be pulled and tugged at. It's going to be tested. It's going to be tried, and it's going to be tried with fire, and it's not going to feel good. If your God is to feel good all the time, you're not going to make it too well. You have to not idolize feeling good and seeking after relief and feeling just right in every situation that presses you. Otherwise, you'll be pulled in the wrong direction trying to get great relief for your feelings. Okay, you have to be the fish that swims upstream, not the one that flops down, where it's easier or feels more comfortable or relieves pain. Listen, you get your pain relief biblically. Don't get your pain relief some other way. That's trap number 2 and trap number 3, and it goes in increments. Okay, now listen to me. Understand that you are so freaking important. That's why any entities that are not even mortal would fight over you. Why would anybody fight over you if you didn't matter? There's a fight over you. That means you're incredibly important. You are unspeakably important. You're critical. You, not the other 14 billion people. You, each one, every individual. It's not a big lump of people that don't matter, or you only matter if you're in the group. You individually. Each one of you individually, critical, eternally. And there's a fight over you. There's a war over you. Now, why do you think that would be? Because you're so loved by your Maker, and you're so hated by the one that hates him. That's simple. There's a big war over you. Now, if you realize no matter what you go through in this boot camp life, if you realize that it is a sign of how critically important you are, and maybe sometimes there's a bigger fight over you some months than other months, some years than other years. Listen, there's a fight over you every day you walk this earth till you take your last breath. There's a fight over you and every individual person that you love. There's a fight over them. Going on over them, a tug of war, only because they're so important eternally. Okay? Always remember, when things hurt and they're hard, it's not because someone discarded you, they're not thinking about you, you don't matter, so you're just thrown to the wind and whatever happens, no one cared. Here's the thing. No, the exact opposite is true. You are so important in an eternal sense. You're an eternal soul. There's a hell to shun and a heaven to gain. One life will soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. There's a fight to keep you from doing anything for God. But don't worry. Don't down yourself. Oh, I'm not doing enough. Just feel important. When things get really hard, know how important that you are, or they wouldn't be so hard. It wouldn't be so hard unless you were really important and you're doing things eternally that help other people. Shun hell and bust heaven wide open. See, you're needed because everybody, each individual is important. And so you're needed so that you can help other people and bust heaven wide open yourself. But it's not going to be simple, easy street because there's a tug of war and a fight over you and your friend and every person made in God's image. Take heart and understand, the worse things get, the harder they are, the more senseless they seem to you. Understand that it is so sensible and so planned. It's planned. When Jesus came and he died on the cross for you, it was planned. When you were born, it was planned. God wanted you to be his child forever. That's his plan. The devil has an opposite plan. There you go. That's the formula for a big fight over you for 85, 95 years. And when the fight gets raging and it hurts and you feel like you're alone in a lot of times, because that's part of the war over your mind and emotions sometimes is you don't feel, like God's favorite person, and you don't feel like he's as close as usual a lot of times when there's a lot of pain. That's why we tell each other, don't go by feelings, don't go by feelings. Go by the facts. Don't be run by emotion. Go by the facts. The emotion will follow in due time. Okay? You got to be a warrior, man. You got to be a warrior. You got to be a soldier. The pastors won't tell you anymore. They hide the truth from you. The pastors won't tell you anymore. You got to find it in the New Testament for yourself. Your local pastor's not going to tell you anything but itch your ears. They're just going to tell you how important you are, and then you're going to go home and go, well, then why am I going through hell half the time? But they don't tell you. You go through hard stuff that doesn't feel good because you're freaking important, and there's a war over you, and there's a hell to shut and a heaven to gain, and God's enemy hates you as much as God loves you. They don't tell you that anymore. It's disgusting. They don't equip the saints to win in the war they're in. They won't even talk about that there's a war. Listen, it's fun. It's adventurous. It hurts like hell and it feels great a lot of the time. I mean, it's up, down, and around. I call it Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. That's what I call this life. All right? I call it Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. It's some Disney ride when I was little. Listen. If you don't laugh, you'll cry, and it's not all bad. It's not all bad. It's got incredibly wonderful times, incredible, beautiful times thrown in, mixed in. But sometimes you go through quite a while and you don't see enough of the beauty, and you really, it just means there's a big war over you. It means you're so incredibly freaking important eternally. It's a fight for your soul. There's a fight for your opinion and where you're going to choose. Let every man be convinced in his own heart. There's a fight for what you're going to be convinced of. And that fight rallies around discomfort. Because the devil knows the more uncomfortable you are, the more likely you are to side with him and turn against God and blame God. And the devil hides, and pastors help him hide, and now it's ridiculed if you even think he's there, in the local mainstream media. And yet the most religious people on earth are the atheists and the liberal, secular, humanist, Marxist religionists. They're the most religious, zealous, passionate zealots with a moral code and a cultural belief system they want to shove down everybody's throat. And they are really religious, but they want to masquerade as if they're not. Okay? So there's a war over you. The devil's as real as God is, and they're both very, very real. You didn't spring out of your great granny's an ape. It's the biggest lie you'll ever come across. Stomp on that lie. Your great-grandmother, your great-great-great-grandmother was made in the image of God just like you. And there was a war over her just like there's a war over you. She was critically important eternally. And she was made in God's image. And you are too. Don't listen to false religions, liberal, secular, humanist, Marxist. Don't listen to false religions. And no matter how uncomfortable your life gets, fight it. Fight it. You're a warrior. You're a soldier. And how you fight is through your mouth. Your mouth. That's what affects the spirit realm. When you rise up, and faith is a big factor in it, but you rise up and you speak the truth out of your mouth. How are you going to do that? You better study your New Testament. And better you do it long before a real dark, hard valley comes, so you're ready and you're not trying to play catch up on your knowledge and your wisdom and your understanding. Okay? But once you're full of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, you're ready. Just keep growing it. In the good times, grow it. That's what smart people do in the spirit. And then when stuff comes, it tries to bother you. Well, first of all, don't idolize feeling good. Don't be like, oh, I got to feel good at all costs. You'll end up sinning, taking the devil's band-aids. Don't do that. Go after God hard and be willing to suffer like Jesus did for you. Like the Lord Jesus Christ did for you. He took up a cross and he was without sin. You would think that you could pick up your cross if you were asked to, or you had to, or you were shoved in a corner and you had no other choice but to do major sin or pick up your cross and follow God. You would think you could. You're no better than your master. You're going to be a servant to something. You're going to be a servant to the devil or God, and you put yourself on the throne of your life. You've just psyched yourself out. You've lied to yourself. You told yourself, oh, I didn't do either. I'm not anybody's servant. Oh, no. You put yourself on the throne of your life. You're the devil's number one servant. That's all he was ever after. He wasn't after direct worship from you. He was after an indirect move on your part to shove God off of his rightful place as your maker and your creator, thereby default, accidentally putting him in charge, putting the devil in charge. He's now your father. If you died today, you would not go to the right place, and you would be maybe a little surprised of who your daddy is, who you made your daddy, who you chose for him to be. You have a choice. There's a fork in the road. There's not three prongs to it. There's a fork in the road. You go right or left. And you choose your father in doing that eternally. You're not going to go back to dirt when you die. You're eternal. You're going to hell or you're going to heaven. You have a father that leads one or the other place.